15 of the strangest cartoons from the past. Have you ever wondered how these shows even made it to television? Instead of polished classics, these were oddball creations that confused kids, baffled parents, and left behind some truly unforgettable moments. From bizarre superheroes to animals with unusual sidekicks, the world of animation once went in directions few could predict. Get ready because this countdown will take you through the weirdest corners of cartoon history. Number 15, Clutch Cargo, 1959. This wasn't just a cartoon. It was a nightmare disguised as children's programming. Clutch Cargo is famous for using a technique called synchro-vox, where real human lips were filmed and then superimposed over still cartoon drawings. Imagine a stiff, motionless face with eerily realistic lips moving in real time. That was the show's defining feature, and it unsettled audiences even back then. The story followed Clutch Cargo, an adventurer who traveled the globe with his young sidekick Spinner and their dog Paddlefoot. On paper, the premise sounded like a classic Saturday morning adventure, but the execution was so bizarre that it left kids equal parts fascinated and disturbed. Instead of fluid animation, the characters were mostly static images, with only the moving lips to break the stillness. It gave the show a strange, almost ghostly atmosphere. The creators defended the style, saying it was cheaper and faster than traditional animation. They were right, episodes could be produced on a fraction of the usual budget. But while kids tuned in, many couldn't shake the unsettling vibe. Parents wrote letters calling it downright spooky. Today it's remembered more as a cult curiosity than an actual adventure cartoon. Looking back, Clutch Cargo proves one thing. Sometimes cutting corners in animation creates something unforgettable, but not for the reasons the creators hoped. Number 14. Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse, 1960. Ever wonder what would happen if Batman had a house cat cousin? Enter Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse, created by none other than Bob Kane, one of the minds behind Batman. But instead of dark, brooding adventures, viewers got a pair of animal superheroes fighting goofy villains with a wild arsenal of gadgets. Courageous Cat carried a weapon that could shoot just about anything the script demanded. Ice ropes, nets, you name it, the cat gun could deliver. His sidekick, Minute Mouse, was meant to be the clever companion, although most of the time he looked more like comic relief. The duo battled a lineup of bizarre villains, including Frog the Crook and the Fox. The stories were simple, the action slapstick, and the tone leaned toward parody more than genuine suspense. What made this cartoon strange wasn't just the premise, but the timing. In the early 60s, superhero cartoons were still finding their footing. Batman hadn't even hit the television airwaves yet. So, this series felt like an odd, animal-themed preview of what was to come. Though short-lived, Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse became a quirky footnote in superhero history. Fans of Batman are often shocked to discover Kane's involvement, especially when they see how wacky the concept was compared to the Dark Knight's serious image. It's one of those shows that leaves you scratching your head, wondering how it ever made it onto television screens in the first place. Number 13. The Mighty Heroes, 1966. This wasn't your average superhero team. Instead of mighty warriors or brilliant geniuses, the Mighty Heroes featured 5 of the most bumbling champions ever assembled. The lineup included Strongman, Rope Man, Tornado Man, Cuckoo Man, and the unforgettable Diaper Man, a literal baby wielding a baby bottle as his weapon of choice. Each episode followed the same formula. A villain threatened the city, the heroes tried to save the day, and chaos inevitably followed. Their powers were often more of a hindrance than a help. Rope Man, for instance, constantly tangled himself in knots. Tornado Man spun uncontrollably until he crashed into buildings. And Diaper Man? Well, he was brave for a toddler, but the sight of a baby leading grown men into battle was as absurd as it sounds. Created by Terry Toons, the same studio behind Mighty Mouse, the show leaned heavily on slapstick and parody. It poked fun at the superhero craze that was sweeping comic books and television. Kids laughed at the antics, but even then it felt oddly surreal. After all, how often do you see a baby commanding a team of supposed protectors? Though it only lasted a single season, the series gained a cult following. Modern audiences rediscover it online and often can't believe it was real. It's a reminder that 60s television was a place where even the weirdest ideas could become full-fledged Saturday morning cartoons. Number 12. The New Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, 1968. At first glance, The New Adventures of Huckleberry Finn looked like another attempt to bring Mark Twain's characters to the screen. But this was no ordinary adaptation. The show combined live-action actors with fully animated environments. Huck, Tom, and Becky were played by real children, but every world they entered was drawn and animated. The result was a hybrid format that felt like stepping into a fever dream. Each week, the trio found themselves transported into a different fantastical land. One week, they might be in ancient Egypt the next, battling pirates and then confronting mythical monsters. They always had to outwit villains before escaping to another animated dimension. The effect was groundbreaking for its time. Mixing live actors with cartoon characters was ambitious, but the technology of the late 60s made it awkward and clunky. Movements didn't line up, and the children often looked like they were stranded in a world that didn't quite react to them. Still, for young audiences, the novelty was fascinating. While the show only ran for one season, it carved a unique spot in television history. It paved the way for later experiments in blending animation with live action. Looking back, it feels both experimental and unintentionally strange, like a dream you half remember after waking up. Number 11. Luno, the White Stallion, 1963. If you thought flying horses only existed in fairy tales, think again. Luno the White Stallion told the story of a magical horse who came to life whenever a young boy named Tim wished on a special coin. Luno would transform from a statue into a winged horse, whisking Tim away on adventures that mixed mythology with Saturday morning fun. What made this cartoon unusual was its tone. Unlike the polished superheroes or silly animal shows of the era, Luno leaned into a more mystical vibe. The horse wasn't just a sidekick, but a guardian figure guiding Tim through lessons disguised as adventures. The villains were often larger-than-life creatures or greedy adults who underestimated the boy and his magical friend. Produced by Terry Toons, it was packaged as a segment within other cartoon shows. Because of that, it never developed the same recognition as standalone series. But those who did catch it remembered the strange mix of fantasy and morality tale. The visuals of Luno soaring through the skies gave it a distinct identity, even if the storytelling felt uneven. Today, it's one of those forgotten gems that feels more like folklore than a cartoon. Mention it to animation fans, and you'll likely get blank stares yet. For a small group of viewers, Luno remains an unforgettable part of their childhood imagination. Number 10. The Beany and Cecil Show, 1962. If you thought sock puppets were odd enough on their own, imagine turning one into a cartoon sea serpent. That's exactly what happened with The Beany and Cecil Show. It started as a live puppet show in the 1950s, but when it shifted to animation, things only got stranger. The main characters were Beany, a plucky little boy with a propeller beanie, and Cecil, a huge, friendly but clumsy sea serpent. The cartoon was filled with slapstick adventures, puns, and wild satire that sometimes went completely over kids' heads. Villains like Dishonest John had exaggerated mannerisms and catchphrases that made them memorable, if not exactly threatening. The series played with parody long before it was common in children's cartoons. For instance, episodes regularly poked fun at celebrities' politics and even advertising. What set this show apart was how offbeat it felt, compared to more straightforward cartoons of the time. Cecil's deep voice, odd proportions, and constant bumbling gave him a strange presence on screen. And Beany? Well, he often felt more like Cecil's babysitter than the star of the show. Despite its weirdness, the cartoon had a loyal fan base. Many kids loved Cecil's goofy charm, while adults quietly appreciated the sly references, slipped in by the writers. Over time, it faded into obscurity, remembered mostly by those who grew up with it. Watching it today, it feels like a relic from an era when television could get away with mixing silliness, satire, and strangeness, all in one package. Number 9, Milton the Monster, 1965. Move over Frankenstein. This monster was more likely to trip over his own feet than terrify villagers. Milton the Monster was a parody series about a goofy creature accidentally created by a mad scientist. Instead of becoming terrifying, Milton turned out polite bumbling and as harmless as a big puppy. The show's humor leaned heavily on poking fun at monster movie cliches. Milton's creators, Professor Weirdo and Count Kook, weren't exactly masterminds either. They were mad scientists more interested in petty schemes and silly inventions than real villainy. Every episode piled on gags about gothic horror tropes, with Milton constantly misunderstanding situations or accidentally foiling plans with his clumsy kindness. What made Milton the Monster so strange was its balance of spooky imagery with slapstick humor. The opening sequence alone, with bubbling cauldrons and lightning bolts, set viewers up for something creepy. But then out popped Milton with a dopey grin and a friendly hello. It was the kind of contrast that confused some audiences, but made others laugh out loud. Although it only ran for one season, the show gained cult status thanks to reruns. Animation fans point to it as one of the earliest examples of using parody to lampoon horror culture. Watching it now, it feels almost surreal, like Halloween collided with a Saturday morning comedy. Number 8. Super President, 1967. Yes, you heard that right. There was once a cartoon called Super President. The premise was exactly what it sounds like. The President of the United States doubling as a superhero in spandex. He used his powers to protect America from villains, disasters, and all kinds of exaggerated threats. Super President could stretch his body, grow to enormous size, and withstand attacks that would flatten ordinary people. He also flew around in a jet barking orders and saving the world in between running the country. It was meant to blend patriotism with the superhero craze of the time. But even for the 60s, the concept felt a little much. The cartoon was criticized almost immediately. Some adults felt the idea of the nation's leader dressing in tights and battling cartoon villains was undignified, even disrespectful. Kids, on the other hand, were just confused. Was this supposed to be serious? Was it a parody? No one could quite tell. Because of the backlash, Super President had a short lifespan. But its sheer weirdness guaranteed it a place in cartoon history. Today it's remembered mostly as an example of how far studios were willing to push superhero stories during the boom years. It remains one of the most head-scratching ideas ever to make it past a network executive's desk. Number 7. Batfink, 1966. Superheroes were everywhere in the 60s, but none quite like Batfink. This short-lived cartoon followed a crime-fighting bat with steel wings and a love of dramatic one-liners. His catchphrase, "My wings are like a shield of steel." Whenever bullets flew his way, he simply folded his metallic wings in front of him, bouncing them back at villains. Batfink was joined by his oversized sidekick Karate, who, true to his name, relied on martial arts to help fight crime. Together, they battled criminals ranging from mad scientist Hugo A. Go-Go to giant robots. Episodes were short, fast-paced, and loaded with campy humor that felt like a send-up of superhero tropes. The animation was basic, but the writing leaned heavily on parody. Batfink's dramatic delivery and absurd gadgets often came across as intentionally silly. Viewers weren't sure if they were meant to take him seriously or laugh at him. Either way, kids tuned in, and the series quietly developed a following. Looking back, Batfink feels like a mix of Batman parody, slapstick comedy, and surreal humor. It didn't have the staying power of other superhero cartoons, but its bizarre concept and strange charm ensure that those who do remember it never forget it. Number 6. The Cattanooga Cats, 1969. Trying to capitalize on the success of the Archies and Scooby-Doo Hanna-Barbera introduced the Cattanooga Cats. The show featured a groovy band of anthropomorphic cats who solved mysteries and performed bubblegum pop songs. Think of it as a psychedelic mashup of a cartoon and a rock concert. Each episode included musical numbers where the cats played hits that felt pulled straight out of the late 60s counterculture. Their band was led by Country a Cool Orange Cat and featured companions like Groove and Kitty Joe. Between the songs, the gang got wrapped up in goofy adventures that mirrored the formula of other Hanna-Barbera cartoons. What made this show strange wasn't just its concept, but its presentation. The Cattanooga Cats leaned heavily on psychedelic visuals, swirling colors, and surreal transitions that screamed late 60s experimentation. It felt more like a tie-in to the era's youth culture than a straightforward cartoon for kids. The music itself wasn't half bad, but the show never found the audience it wanted. By trying to appeal to both children and teenagers, it landed in a strange in-between zone. Still, it stands as one of the oddest attempts to blend pop music and animation into a single package. Watching it now is like opening a time capsule of late 60s pop culture. Number 5. Roger Ramjet, 1965. If Captain America had a goofy cousin, it would be Roger Ramjet. This cartoon featured a square-jawed hero with a voice as stiff as his personality, leading a group of kids called the American Eagles against all manner of ridiculous villains. His secret, proton energy pills that gave him strength for exactly 20 seconds. The gag was that he almost always wasted those seconds in the most absurd ways possible. The humor was sharp and satirical, poking fun at Cold War attitudes, superhero cliches, and even television culture itself. Episodes were short, often under 5 minutes, and packed with rapid-fire jokes that older viewers sometimes appreciated more than the kids. Roger's straight-laced delivery contrasted hilariously with the nonsense unfolding around him. Villains like Noodles Romanoff and his band of no-goods were intentionally over-the-top, more bumbling than threatening. Meanwhile, the American Eagles' young kids meant to represent patriotism and teamwork often ended up saving the day when Roger's plans failed. The mix of parody and slapstick gave the cartoon a tone unlike anything else on television. Though it never achieved mainstream success, Roger Ramjet gained cult status through reruns. Its witty writing and absurd premises made it a hidden gem for fans of offbeat comedy. Looking back, it feels like a bizarre mashup of superhero adventure and tongue-in-cheek satire, one that still sparks laughs today for anyone who appreciates weird cartoons done right. Number 4. The Adventures of Paddy the Pelican, 1950s. If you've never heard of The Adventures of Paddy the Pelican, there's a reason it's widely regarded as one of the strangest and cheapest cartoons ever made. The animation looked like it had been drawn in a hurry, the voices were scratchy, and the sound often cut in and out. Episodes were so poorly produced that they almost felt like an unintentional parody of animation itself. The main character Paddy was a pelican who got into simple adventures, but the storytelling was so chaotic that it was hard to follow. Characters would suddenly appear without explanation. Dialogue overlapped, and entire scenes felt unfinished. To modernize, it looks less like a children's cartoon and more like a surreal experiment gone wrong. Yet, in its own way, that roughness gave Paddy the Pelican a strange charm. Some viewers found the awkward pacing and strange voices unintentionally funny, and the show gained a reputation as one of the so bad it's good classics of early television. Clips are still passed around online today, usually leaving new viewers in disbelief that it was ever broadcast. It may not have been polished, but Paddy the Pelican has cemented its place as one of the strangest cartoons of all time. Sometimes failure leaves a mark just as lasting as success. Number 3. The Super Globe Trotters, 1979. Imagine the Harlem Globe Trotters, the iconic basketball team, transforming into superheroes with outlandish powers. That's exactly what happened in the Super Globe Trotters. This spin-off series took the already quirky concept of basketball entertainers and cranked it up to comic book levels. Each member of the team had a unique power. One could transform into liquid, another could stretch. Like rubber, and one even became a basketball-shaped ball of energy. Together, they fought crime, battled evil robots, and saved the world, all while keeping their trademark sense of humor. What made it so strange wasn't just the idea of athletes doubling as superheroes, but how seriously the show played it. The Globetrotters went from dazzling crowds with trick shots to stopping villains in dramatic fashion. One moment, they were dribbling a basketball, the next, they were saving entire cities. The series didn't last long, but it remains a fascinating example of how the 70s loved mashing up pop culture icons with superhero themes. Fans of the real Harlem Globetrotters were often baffled, but kids enjoyed the colorful adventures. Looking back, it's equal parts campy and surreal, a reminder of how unpredictable Saturday morning cartoons could be. Number 2. Fred and Barney Meet the Thing, 1979. On paper, this sounds like a crossover event for the ages. In reality, it was one of the strangest mashups ever produced. Fred and Barney Meet the Thing combined the Flintstones characters with Marvel's Rocky superhero, The Thing. The odd part? Fred and Barney never actually interacted with him. Instead, the show simply packaged their cartoons together, branding it as a crossover, even though the characters never met. The Thing's solo segments made the cartoon even stranger. Instead of being the gruff superhero from the Fantastic Four, he was reimagined as a teenager named Benji Grimm who transformed into the Thing using magical rings. It was a complete departure from the Marvel comics, and fans were left scratching their heads at the drastic changes. The decision to combine prehistoric comedy with superhero fantasy made little sense, but somehow it aired on Saturday mornings. Kids who tuned in expecting Fred Flintstone to chat with the thing were disappointed, while comic fans were baffled by the changes to one of Marvel's most famous heroes. Today it's remembered as one of the most confusing and mismatched ideas in cartoon history. It tried to ride two waves at once, but ended up sinking into obscurity. Number 1. Gilligan's Planet. 1982. Just when you thought Gilligan and the gang had suffered enough being stranded on an island, Hanna-Barbera sent them into outer space. Gilligan's Planet was a direct spin-off of Gilligan's Island, with the familiar castaways building a spaceship and crash landing on a strange alien planet. The show kept the original sitcom's dynamic complete with Gilligan's endless clumsiness and the skipper's frustration, but transplanted it into a sci-fi setting. Every episode revolved around the group trying to survive in bizarre environments, while meeting aliens that ranged from friendly to ridiculous. What made it so strange was how far removed it was from the original concept. Instead of dealing with coconuts and bamboo huts, the castaways were now repairing spacecrafts and interacting with alien technology. It was a wild leap that confused older fans of the live-action series, but entertained some kids who had never seen the original. While it only lasted one season, Gilligan's Planet stands out as one of the most bizarre reimaginings in cartoon history. It turned a familiar sitcom into a space-age adventure that nobody saw coming. Watching it now feels like stepping into an alternate reality where anything could happen and often did. And there you have it. 15 of the strangest cartoons ever made proof that old television was never afraid to get weird. From space castaways to bumbling heroes, these shows remind us how unpredictable animation could be. Which one shocked you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, pass this along to a fellow fan, and hit subscribe for more forgotten gems from pop culture's strangest corners.